কথা শুনতে।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, we will run that test right before we start. Okay, it seems that everyone is here. I'd like to remind you all to use the Grand Auditorium Tech channel to ask POIs. I'll also be sometimes posting updates on the time, specifically on the 1st minute and on the 6th minute, so that you all can remember when to ask POIs and when not to. In addition to that, I'd like to ask you guys if you consent to streaming this, because we understand that this is a sensitive motion. So if you agree, please do say so in the Grand Auditorium text. If you don't, please say that as well. Okay. So Onkita and Alwasi consent. Grand Auditorium. Okay. Adi is not cool. Consider. All right. So the teams that consented will only be able to stream the upper house then. If that's all right with you, you can obviously say so in the Grand Auditorium. It would be a bit unusual, but yeah. Okay, so then we'll assume that upper house consents to streaming, and so we'll be streaming at least the upper house of the debate. Muqtasim Munir, if you're here and listening to this, please remember to only stream the upper house. Okay, so we'd like to do a little voice test before we begin. If OG could confirm that they're here and that we can hear you as well. Adil Bhai.
Adel would be DPM. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes. Okay.
Kotib will be the PM.
Okay. OO. Ankita and okay, and Alwasi.
Can you speak a bit louder?
Hello. Can you hear me?
A bit louder would be better.
Hello.
Yeah, now fine.
Yeah. Alwasi.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me?
You are cutting off a little.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Alia and Wasif, if you could run that voice test.
Hear me.
Hello. So then we'll assume that upper house consent. Alia, I think, and so could you will be speak again?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear. Okay, Adi and Nara.
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, audible. Naira?
Hello.
Yes, we are all good then. Okay, then we can begin. If you guys will mix, all right. So welcome to the on with me on the panel will be Sajid Sapanbhai, Farhan Rahman, Rafi Shafin, and of course Shonadi. So without further ado, I'd like to call upon the Prime Minister to begin this debate. Here.
Hello. So the motion we are going to propose is that this house as an LGBT organization would advocate for the boycott of shows, movies that have LGBT roles played by straight actors. To understand that what we want, we have to understand that what is the agenda of the LGBT movement. is to portray how these people interact with other people, the social discourse of it, and how they think in different situations and stuff. And this is portrayed in various TV shows and movies that we see. Now, we acknowledge that this is the first wave of our success in the LGBT movement, that these things are currently being portrayed in various roles. For example, we see in Gotham and sex education and
So
other
then we'll
TV
assume
series.
that
We see that
upper
these
house
are being
is 10.
acknowledged as the
Alia, I
first wave
think,
of our
and
success.
so
When we
you will
move
be
further towards the proper achieving the correct goals for this LGBT movement, we see that this is the high time we step into the second wave, that is getting the nuances of their lifestyle being properly represented by the actors in these TV shows. Now, we understand that if these LGBT are because there are currently being double standards in this industry. Why? Because they are ready to put up the character who who are different from the general. They have their own kind of preferences. They are ready to put up this character, but they are not ready to put up the people, the actual people, to be portraying these characters. That's the double standard the current industry is currently into. And when we understand that this entertainment industry is not only the portrayal of the movies and TV shows that we see in our screens and in our laptops or in the cinemas, this is far bigger than that. When an entire industry has an impact on shaping up a movement, what happens is that apart from these TV shows, what we see, there is a surge of fan fictions, magazines, red carpets. We look into the lifestyles of these actors. What happens is that a very wide sense of discourse all around the society. So what happens is that if these actors only portray what the LGBT movement is about, but then they don't act like it out of their lifestyle, and what happens is that this also doesn't create the actual discourse that this movement requires in the second wave of its success. We understand that the general people associate the character to the person who plays, because we understand that these people have amount of impact and how we choose different kinds of style pop up when we see these people acting in on the screen. We see that we see different kinds of dressing styles from Thomas Shelby and other actors are being incorporated into the lifestyle. Just like that, different types of thinking style, different types of problems that these LGBT people face into their lifestyle, this has to be correctly represented by the people who actually face it. Because what happens is that, for example, Neil Patrick is a very vocal LGBT movement person, but he also played roles that are extremely straight roles. So what happens is this is itself a double standard, because in this case the whole representation of the entire idea is dependent on the script, and there is a chance of losing that in the process of acting it out. When that happens, we understand that this movie portrayal has to be either perfect, absolutely perfect, or two is that when after this movie the fan fictions and other associated activities pop up, those has to be perfect too. In these two sectors, we see that ultimate perfection, optimal perfection is hardly achievable, and that's why we find out that these LGBT roles played by straight actors might impose greater questions for us to address, and it would be easier for us if these are actually portrayed by the correct people who actually face these problems into their lifestyle. I'll take a POI from the CEO.
Can you please define by what do you mean by like accurately portraying what a gay person does in their real life?
Fine, thank you. What happens is that we see there are, for example, a gay person who doesn't necessarily have doesn't necessarily have enough choices for them. Another gay people also have to speak out that this is their preferences. And so what happens for a teenager, we see that when we love someone and we are in a trauma and we are in a dilemma that whether I speak up or not, we have a set expectation that if it goes wrong, these things will happen. But for a gay person, the expectation of problems and also what can happen, these things are extremely different set. There are different set of these expectations, and for that these problems has to be only a gay person or an LGBT person who have come through these years of socialization, through these problems, will be able to aptly put it out that what they feel and what it happens, because very often the contents, the actual meaning of the problem and the inherent success of this movement depends not in the word but rather in the nuances of their acting and nuances of their of the emotions that they put into it. And we also need to understand that the general people who look into these actors will also acknowledge if this industry starts putting up the actual people to be playing these characters, not only putting the characters up front for the sake of plot advancement and stardom pool for their own shows. What happens is that if they start putting on the people, the general people, the audiences will also get to understand that this is not something only on the TV show, only in the screens that we see. This is a real life thing. So when we take out the story from the screens to the real life scenarios, we understand, we get to know that this is a movement that we should be normalizing we should be normalizing the lifestyle of these LGBT people, and that is why we are very proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech, Leader of Opposition.
Hello, am I audible?
Loud and clear. Could everyone else please turn off their mics? Tamim? Yeah, thank you.
We're starting in 3, 2, 1. Firstly, I think OG's major claim in this debate is that straight actors cannot empathize with LGBTQ members or the roles that they're playing. If we can break down that entire premise, we don't think that OG's case stands in this debate. So two responses to the entire case. Firstly, we don't think that actors are the 100 different people that they tend to play over the entire career, right? That means that Christian Bale isn't probably Batman in his real life, and hence is going to have the legitimacy to play Batman. We think that actors have that inherent ability to empathize with the characters that they are going to play because they put a lot of study behind those characters, the way those characters move, or the way those characters moved in their real lives, or the accents that they talked with, or the way, or the places that they visited with, or the particular relationship dynamics that they had with other people. We think that actors often put a lot of study behind those things. We don't think that misrepresentation is likely to happen. For example, Heath Ledger spent months locked inside a room to actually study how the Joker thought, or what his thought process was like, right? But moreover, for that argument to stand, they have to tell us why straight actors are unable to portray those characters at all instances. That's to say, why are you going to put a blanket ban? Secondly, the problem with the entire case is that they fear misrepresentation. But if we can show you that misrepresentation is unlikely, then it becomes their burden to tell us why it is okay to blanketly boycott each and every movie that has straight actors in gay characters or lesbian characters, right? Because there are also going to be cases where these characters are properly represented, so they also need to tell us why they are going to boycott films in which those characters are properly represented. Now moving on to my positive cases. Firstly, we are going to tell you what are the two grounds for boycotting something and how this particular scenario doesn't fulfill both those grounds. Firstly, could I get a minute count?
2 minutes.
Okay, so what are the grounds for boycotting? Firstly, like subscribing into a thing or not boycotting a particular thing, like accrues you direct harms. But secondly, that the misrepresentation is so outrageous, or to the extent that any form of discussion or any form of discourse that you have within that particular sphere is likely to not be fruitful, or is likely to be pernicious, and hence should boycott that thing entirely. Why are these two criteria justified? Firstly, these are justified for two reasons. Firstly, that means like subscribing you into that particular thing means that you are going to accrue harm. Individuals or groups should not advocate for things that particularly harms them or their interests, because preserving your own dignity is the most important thing that one individual or one group can do. What are the harms that we are talking about? The harms that we are talking about are things such as taking our opportunity from LGBTQ actors. If entire gov bench cannot show us how it takes away opportunities from LGBTQ actors, we don't think that they have a case. But secondly, like misrepresentation, we think that at certain particular points in time, you can boycott certain movies or certain TV shows if misrepresentation is to an outrageous extent. That is to say, no form of discussion or no form of discourse will have any positive impact. What does it look like? It looks like things such as Aladdin being played by a white Caucasian when he's certainly an Arab, right? We think that such types of outrageous misrepresentation are things that you should boycott. So why does this particular scenario not fulfill both those criteria? Firstly, on the point of harming yourself, we think that what does harming yourself look like? It means that taking away opportunity from LGBTQ actors. We don't think that we are taking away opportunities from LGBTQ actors for two reasons. Firstly, now the number of roles that are available for these types of things have increased. That means that there are now more bi characters in popular media, that there are more gay characters, that there are more lesbian characters. So the number of actors that can reach out for those characters is far more, and hence accessibility has increased. So it doesn't take away opportunity from real gay actors, right? But secondly, these actors can also play roles of straight roles, right? For example, Neil Patrick Harris playing a straight guy in How I Met Your Mother. I think that these are also types of roles that these people can play. So because you're essentially not taking away opportunity from LGBTQ actors, we don't think that these are enough grounds for you to boycott such movies. But secondly, how misrepresentation is unlikely. So firstly, we think that Hollywood is most sensitive about these things in this particular point in time. Hollywood is most sensitive about the rights of women, about the rights of gay actors and LGBTQ actors, right? So characters are likely to be written in ways that properly represents the lifestyle that these people have, or are likely to be properly scrutinized, or scripts are likely to be written in ways that do not portray them in stereotypical ways. These characters are likely to be explored in multiple dimensions, and hence a proper picture is likely to be represented. So the characters that these actors play are likely to be well thought of, and hence there is very little chance of misrepresentation in the very first. Secondly, dynamics of gay characters or LGBTQ characters have changed throughout time, right? What do we mean by this? Initially, you'd always see LGBTQ characters to be of certain type. For example, lesbian people would be portrayed in a machistic way, and gay characters would be portrayed in ways that they were soft and wouldn't do anything that was remotely masculine. But we think that Hollywood has broken out from those types of stereotypical definitions. For example, the character of Holt in Brooklyn Nine-Nine tells you that gay people can also be strong, can also be masculine, right? That means that there are multiple dimensions that Hollywood is exploring, and hence the opportunity or scope for you to misrepresent these types of things is often very limited. Because there's very little chance of misrepresentation, and because you're not harming yourself, we don't think those are enough grounds for you to boycott those sorts of movies. But even if you don't buy all this, we don't think that even if misrepresentation is likely to happen in an outrageous manner or in an outrageous extent, we still don't think that boycotting is the solution to the problem. We think that if you watch those movies, or if you allow your community members, the LGBTQ community members, to watch those movies, there's more likely to be a more fruitful discussion where you have first-hand knowledge of what went down in the movie, and hence you have more knowledge, and hence you have more leverage to criticize the types of misrepresentation that happen in the movie. Understand this. Even if you do advocate for boycotting, there will still be some people who would watch those movies. That means that there will still be misrepresentation, and there still be people who would have the misconstrued image. The only way to stop that is for you to watch that movie and take a stand against it for all those reasons.
Thank you for that speech, Deputy Prime Minister.
Starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel, you know who can empathize with these characters better? Most likely an LGBT people. When Almost comes up and identifies that yes, these characters have, or like these actors who are straight have their inherent ability of empathizing because they do a lot of research. I think you do not have to go through this research if you actually place an LGBT person in that LGBT role, because they would be able to much more like organically portray that role inherently. What we identify that from a perspective of an LGBT movement's aspect, we have certain limitations in resources, and we have certain limitations in the limelight that we have. And inherently from a movement perspective, we need to ensure that we are utilizing that resource and limelight to the highest extent. When Almost comes up and tries to talk about that, yes, there is a possibility of fruitful discussion happening because characters are increasing, and there is a possibility of this role being portrayed in a much better way. We identify the double standard that Khotib actually came up and talked about in PM. When he mentions that the double standard exists because you, in a situation where you know that there are people like Neil Patrick Harris or like Ellen Page or Jim Parsons or like Ruby Rose are there in the industry, and you are still willing to place a straight actor or actress in that specific role, inherently means that you are willing to put that character in that movie, but not necessarily willing to put that individual in the limelight that you want. This inherently also identifies that in this situation, you are most likely focusing on more sort of like a ratings boost and the plot development rather than creating a social narrative development inherently, and that is essentially something that we are quite strongly against. And this is something that we feel the OO has not necessarily even identified in their entire LO speech, because in the entire speech that came from Alwasi, we did not necessarily see any sort of unique benefit of the contribution that these straight actors are putting, but there is a significant level of can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, the significant level of complications that can happen, because just as I mentioned that this possibility of getting misportrayal, because Alwasi's entire idea of empathizing with these characters essentially depend on the character being written in the right way and the character being portrayed in the right way. If either of these things happen, like even in a situation where like Christian Bale or like a good actor like him tries to portray a character which has been written badly, this won't necessarily even get portrayed properly in those movies, and that is something that we identify. I will take the POI a bit later. Something that we identify to be something problematic in a situation where you actually place an LGBT actor or actress in that role, even during the discussion of how this character is going to get portrayed, or even the way that this person is going to portray that character, would essentially improve the way that this character is going to get portrayed in a significantly much better way. Before moving on further, yes, POI from O.
Yeah, why does something need to have an exclusive benefit for you to not boycott it?
Okay, so answering that specific thing, as I mentioned, and something that I was building up to right up until this moment, is that resource and the limelight that you have is sort of like limited from the LGBT movement's perspective. When the narrative that you are trying to portray through these specific characters or actresses, if you give additional scope to LGBT actors and actresses to portray more roles in their appropriate characters, appropriate roles, means they have a significant high level of limelight. which limelight would not have been given to the people, would not have been there if you had like portrayed these characters through a straight actor, because they would not be discussing about like LGBT movements in their like promotion of the movie or in their general life. But an LGBT actor or actress who has shot up to fame because of these movies, or like has shot up to fame because of doing this specific characters or having a lot of more limelight, would have been able to get that specific thing. Alwasi tries to mention that yes, these characters, these people would be able to play a lot more roles and they would be able to come to this limelight. We think they're focusing more on the portrayal of this specific character, or like they're having both roles of like an LGBT character and also a straight character, does not necessarily diminish their capacity of acting if you identify them to be a very significantly well skilled person. So that's when we see that this double standard that is existing in the industry should actually be actively boycotted by a movement that is essentially focusing on ensuring that the right amount of resources is being spent on this thing. When you see like an entertainment industry having a significant level of contribution in creating or like shaping the way that people behave, essentially has, I will take the POI within the next 30 seconds, it inherently improves the capacity of like furthering the discussion in the right direction, and the entertainment industry has a significant capacity of like hijacking the movement or like hijacking discussion towards the way that the roles are getting portrayed, essentially creates a sort of problem that is something that we are trying to avoid by being actively vocal and trying to boycott the movies through the way that they're getting promoted, the way that the characters are being processed. And before the 6 minute, yes, POI from CEO.
Okay, Atul bhai, the LGBT plus movement wants to empower sexuality as a choice. So what kind of precedent does it set when a person who's gay can play a masculine character who's a straight guy, but the same person who's a straight guy who's masculine cannot play a gay character? Is that something that they wants right now?
I think like even if this is a situation where you are sort of like barring a gay character from playing a straight role, that is inherently still in connection with the LGBT movements, like more short-term agenda, where you're trying to focus on creating a better narrative and creating a better portrayal of who these people are and how skillful they are. If they try to identify that yes, like this, the fluidity of sexuality, or like this, like freedom of sexuality is something that you are trying to focus on LGBT movement, most likely identifying that yes, there are right amount of skilled actors and actresses in the industry who are capable of playing like those significantly high budget movies, or like characters in those movies are there, essentially also distract the discussion from identifying that yes, there are people who are already skilled, and there are people who you can already look up to, and that is something that we identify to be a very important battle for us to win, even before going into that entire discussion of those like sexual freedom and everything. So this is where we identify that even this is a situation where we have to choose which is a more important battle for us to win. In current situation, what we identify that the double standard is something that is there, and if we do not actively voice out against that right at this moment, we will lose out on limelight, and that is essentially what we identify that yes, we need to boycott, and that is why we are very proud to propose from the OG. Thanks.
Thank you for that speech, Deputy Prime Minister. And now for the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Can I get 30 seconds to assemble my...
Sure.
The industry has a significant capacity of like hijacking.
Hello, Ankita.
Okay.
Yeah, starting in 3, 2, 1. So the biggest idea from what we get from their side is the idea of double standards and how there will be misrepresentation because the straight actors cannot empathize with the roles they're offered as the actors from the LGBT. So before I move on to my positive matter, let's just talk about that. So they first talked about the double standards, right? But realize they complain about how people might not be able to not be able to believe a role or not understand that role if the actor is something on screen that they're not in real life. We don't see why that is exclusive of the LGBTQ community, because actors, their entire career is playing something on screen and playing it properly because that is their career, and playing something that they are not actually in real life, right? Because we don't see how just because Chris Hemsworth plays Thor, he's actually a god. Or the fact that Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man, we don't think he's a very genius billionaire in real life. So they never told you as to what is so exclusive about it, except for one thing, is empathy. And I will talk about that. But then they talk about the misrepresentation. 2 speeches down, we still don't understand the clear view as to what the misrepresentation looks like, right? In what scenario it will happen, in what circumstances an LGBTQ a straight actor might not be responding to a scenario as an LGBTQ person would be, right? So we don't understand what they're talking about because realize LGBTQ people don't have a certain way of acting. They don't have a particular characteristic that every single LGBTQ person follow, right? There's a certain way of how they act. There is no textbook or rules in which they follow as to how these people act. So years ago, there was a stereotype in mainstream media in Hollywood, which was the stereotype of gay person who was jaunty and flamboyant. Now we are seeing more and more roles of gay people who are strong, like, for example, Holt or Cameron, and they're not weak and they're not always fashionable and they don't care about dancing or being flamboyant, right? So we are seeing the gradual change of how, there is an entire spectrum of how LGBTQ people act and function, and we don't still understand how the characteristic misrepresentation actually plays out. So I will only, they talk about the exclusive harms and benefits. I will show to you by 2 fold. Why boycott is not the most efficient for discourse. First of all, for people to understand not only the LGBTQ community, because the agenda of the LGBTQ community is to make people empathize with their struggles, with how they are, with the dilemmas they have from the very childhood. We need to make sure that these individuals get to witness this, get to view this for themselves, right? So the moment in time when there is some slight misrepresentation in a movie or in a scene, but you tell everyone and you spread the message not only to your LGBTQ community, but also to the people who are not from that community, to not watch that movie because there's something wrong with that movie. You can still talk about where that movie went wrong. You can still talk about why that particular scene is wrong, but you don't exactly have to boycott it, because if you boycott it, you're essentially asking people not to watch it. But people need to watch it because they need to see it for themselves. They, rather than having secondhand information from a Facebook post as to what a particular scene and how it is incorrect, they need to watch that movie and experience for themselves. And from that information from the Facebook post, they have to relate it. They have to connect with the scene that they just watched and then understand as to why that particular scene might be incorrect. And that is the only way they can truly understand the nuances of how that scene went wrong, or how that movie went wrong, or how it would have been better portrayed by an LGBTQ actor, right? And that's something that does not happen under their world, because the moment in time there is some misrepresentation, they just tell people not to watch the movie, or rather than telling them to experience for themselves, right? But this exclusive harm, secondly, is, look, social discourse is not the most functional or clear, because there are still groups of people who might not be anti-LGBTQ. They might not exactly hate on the community, but they still don't care enough to advocate for them or share positive LGBTQ posts on Facebook, or probably attend a parade, right? But see, the moment in time when you're harping on boycott, and when you're harping on boycotting and you tell people not to watch the movie or boycott the actor or the director, and are hateful towards it, a large group of people still might believe that LGBTQ people are just a group of angry people who make everything about themselves. They think that they might feel that this community will like slide through some struggle of their life into anything is something what they believe, right? They think that they're just people who make a mountain out of a molehill and they're not important enough. Why is this important? Because even if they're not anti-LGBTQ, they simply are people who don't exactly care enough to try to get into the nuances of the conversation. Now, what is the outcome of this? Is people, a group of people who just, this builds on their perception that whatever the LGBTQ community is talking about or advocating about is something that is exaggerated and something that shouldn't be taken as importantly because this is something they're just making a huge deal out of nothing, right? But then let's talk about why. Why it's not like how our world is more efficient for building on this social perception. Sure, LGBTQ actors might be more easily empathetic towards those roles, but realize in mainstream media and in Hollywood, they have the entire incentive of the entire incentive structure is of monetary incentive, right? So because the incentive is of monetary, they want to get popular actors, they want to get more mainstream actors who have greater liking and a large number of people who might watch that movie just because they're there. Now, in a circumstance where the directors and producers might have to choose that actor who is more popular over an actor who might just simply be able to empathize with that LGBTQ role bill, we think that choosing